Howdy, folks. I made Glamrock Freddy. Well, kind of his head shell. He looks pretty fantastic to me. Okay, actually, though, hopefully I will make a second part with all the insides and electronics and stuff, but for right now, I'm going to take a break from it to work on other things for my to-do list. Having said that, let's take a look at my progress. I found raw files of Freddy's model that were ripped directly from the Security Breach game files and started making it 3D printable with Blender's 3D printing plugin. One thing I didn't do that I heavily regret now was take more time smoothing the model. It didn't have enough faces, so the prints came out really geometric and low poly, as you can see here. If you're going to be doing this in any capacity, clean up the model first, since it made my sanding time a lot harder later. I have no idea why I recorded that bit separately. Anyways, I was trying to be careful with this part of the process because the pieces supposedly fit together perfectly based on how I sliced them, which, didn't turn out that way later. But I tried to keep it as aligned as possible. I think I ran out of filament or something twice at one point, so there's bits there that don't fit as well, since I didn't want to waste time reprinting the part, which at the time may have seemed foolish, but between the heat creep warping the parts to the extended print time and the hot time since it's PETG, and my extreme overconfidence in using a soldering iron after the deer skull, it was inevitable that I would use everything I printed first try. Anyways, here's the face and cheek pieces. I'll leave you to some nice time-lapse music, and then you'll continue to hearing my ominous disembodied voice after. So this photo was taken in September of 2022, and then he sat on my shelf until January because I couldn't get the jaw piece to slice correctly. It only worked after I put it through 5 STL fixing websites. I never said I was a professional at this. Anyways, here's the jaw time lapses, still featuring the Octoprint watermark, even though I found the setting that's supposed to turn it off. It still hasn't. Great. Now we got it all laid out, and woohoo, another time lapse. Yippee-ki-yay, he looks like the Faz Boy himself now. Look, guys, he could be Withered Bunny. He's on his way there. Oh yeah, he also has teeth, I forgot to mention those. Okay, boom, our boy is together. Sort of. I didn't record much of the next part because I was lazy, and also because it was all just tiny little things, like filling in gaps and making sure everything was level and fit together. Okay, anyways, I cleaned up the snout and then attached it to the cheek piece. Also, if you're wondering why I hollowed it out, it was a split-second decision, because I still needed a spot for the batteries and stuff, since, yes, I do have a basic outline despite this entire project giving the appearance that I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I'm not, mostly. After, I covered the shell in wood filler and got to sanding. I love how you can see that it takes a stupidly long amount of time for me to get the wood filler out of the tube. Also, technically, you don't need to coat the entire thing like I did, only the seams. I think while it may be classified as a blunder, it did help to have some extra material there while sanding. And then my phone died, but you didn't really miss much. I just finished covering the teeth. So this is only a portion of the agony I suffered that I didn't record anymore because you literally can't see anything.
Remember how I said earlier? Golly gee, I really should have smoothed out the model beforehand. Well, it's been a week. I've been sanding every day for 7 fucking days straight, and these stupid fucking swears won't go away. I'm about to lose my shit.
Anyways, I went back and forth with 80 grit sandpaper and wood filler like 4 times, then leveled the head hemisphere and the snoot circle with this here piece of wood and sandpaper. You can see there are remains on it. Lastly, it was just a bunch of cleanup stuff. On the 6th day, I was determined to finish sanding. It did not happen. The only thing to note besides the large quantity of sanding is that I had to use some epoxy sculpt on the head hemisphere because the piece between the eyes was too short. Boom, it's like magic. I also used the extra epoxy to fix some other projects I have going. Anyways, after that, we have more sanding. Woohoo! Oh, and that's the Mandalorian helmet I was simultaneously spray painting. And then I was finally on a primer. Funny story, I had to wait for 2 days to get it because we kept showing up at different Lowe's, and they said they had it in stock, and then it was nowhere to be found. Anyways, here's the first coat. It really shows all my sanding failures very clearly. Love that. I ended up doing primer on the teeth as well, and then it started raining. I'll be honest when I say I just sat there on the floor and watched the rain for like 30 minutes and wondered what I was doing with my life. Speaking of which, it caused the power to go out for less than a second, but that was enough to fail my first ear print. That in turn caused the webcam to shut off, and now I don't have the time-lapse footage for the left ear. So, here's the right ear, and maybe you can, gaslight yourself into believing you see both of them? The next day I came back and sanded the primer, since it's sandable primer, and quickly figured out that it actually did fill in the holes quite well, and I only needed another coat to make it smooth. Mostly smooth. We're gonna pretend it's smooth. Now, if you're a smart individual with a propensity for visual foreshadowing, you might see where this is going. Spray paint, applied in a thin, minimal coat, without extra paint dripping down the sides of a part, was a, shall we say, new concept to me. Yeah, I didn't know how to properly spray paint. Eventually I realized after maybe 3 coats that I was in fact the problem in this equation. I started with Krylon's Spiced Amber for the orange color, but for complete accuracy you want Montana Gold, Golden Yellow Orange, GD1240, which I got later on. The beige, blue, and red colors are Krylon Satin Ivory, Montana Black, Light Blue, and Krylon Gloss Banner Red, respectively, which aren't completely accurate, but I tried my best. This project made me really wish I had an airbrush. Anyways, eventually I got my act together, sanded it down again, and spray painted it properly. Those were an agonizing couple of weeks. Next, I got to work on the ear springs and ears respectively. I just started with 20 gauge steel wire and wrapped it around this thick screwdriver to make a spring shape. Unfortunately, when I tested it by hot gluing it to the head, the ears flopped over pathetically. My second solution was taking some wire from spiral notebooks that I had on hand. I have no idea what gauge it is, but it was a bit thicker. I ended up combining it with the 20 gauge wire and mangled it on with some hot glue, super glue, and a hope and a prayer. The ears themselves I've been somewhat neglectful in photographing, but here's some sanding progress next to another project I was sanding. Eventually I put filler primer on them as well. If we're considering this process as a chronological timeline, the eyeballs were up next, about 3 months after this, honestly. The eyes and top hat I had considered leaving out of this part and then posting a second part where I fully finished it. Predominantly the reasoning behind this was just because I had no experience 3D modeling. It was difficult to get the shell together in the first place, fully 3D print ready, much less an articulated set of animatronic eyeballs. My solution was not one I expected. An amazing cosplay YouTuber named Little Gem made a much more put-together Glamrock Freddy head, unlike my utter car crash of a project. She gave all the files for free in her much nicer tutorial. So I am stealing the eyeballs. I want to properly make the top hat using the model I got, so I might make an update video when I have that done, but for now, the eyeballs. I printed them out in PETG as per usual, and my first idea was to thin down the plastic where the iris goes with my soldering iron, and there's the difference between the two. Here's my LED test, so not letting any light through where I want it to. So on to plan B. I obviously can't thin it down anymore without damaging it irreparably, so resin casting. Yay! I'm going to make a silicone mold with the undamaged one since the heat warped the other one a bit, but first I have to sand it. Good enough. Anyways, I coated the iris in XTC 3D to fill in the gaps that the sanding hadn't managed to, casted it in silicone, and bada bing bada boom, a mold. Now I just gotta cast it twice. Boom, eyes done. Before I got the right orange color, I decided to spray paint the eyebrows and nose. Maybe that was a good idea, maybe it wasn't. I completely underestimated how much overspray the paint would have, and the tape did not adhere enough to the part, and the random black spray paint did not mix well with the orange underneath. The result is emo Freddy? I don't know, but I'm glad it's not on the actual orange paint with this atrocity. I already knew I was doing another coat, so it wasn't a complete loss. The nose went a bit better in comparison, but I honestly feel like anything would have gone better than that. I sanded down the black paint around the eyebrows as best as I could. Weirdly, the black adhered well to the nose, which may have been because I avoided painting it, so it may have been that, or that it just doesn't react horribly to crinoline satin ivory. After this, I decided to put in the teeth, mainly because they were just small parts that kept cluttering my work area, and I planned on having satin ivory as my final beige color, so it seemed to find time to do it. I finally did the proper orange and the blue and red accents. The Montana gold behaved more so like a tint than a color on the head, so the overall composition didn't change much, which I also sort of blame on the orange underneath, but I decided it was fine. Having said that, Krylon Spiced Amber actually does seem like a decent budget option if you're looking to do this and not buy specialty paints. The colors are extremely similar. I just wanted the exact coloring, but the average person wouldn't notice. Anywho, I started the detailing with the blue stripe on his chin, and ooh, it's crisp, by my standards anyways. The Montana brand spray paints are very unique. First, there's no traditional caps, and they come with a plastic circle that goes in between the can and the nozzle to block it from spraying. It took me a second to figure out, which is why I'm sharing. I painted the ears straight on, and so far it's going good. With the other detail parts, I decided that printing a template would be too inaccurate unless I did it from scratch, which also has the potential to be inaccurate. So, I have my frog tape, a measuring tape, and a pencil, and I'm heavily using a reference image. I used the distance between the eyes for the length the pattern should be on the outside of the eyes, and then went from there. Honestly, I should have taken the extra time. It's a bit wonky, and I correct it with acrylics later. But I'm so happy to see it like this after a year and a half of work. I used the leftover tape as extra covering for the ears when spray painting the insides. After that, it's pretty much just down to assembly. Thank fucking God we're in the home stretch.
And here's the final result.
Number 1 always starts with the model. Mine did not have enough geometry, which made it a huge pain in the ass to sand later on, and some of the pieces were sliced improperly, forcing me to redo large parts of the head. I'm also very mad that I forgot those tiny squares on the sides of the head. I wanted to share these things for anyone who may be looking to 3D print helmets, props, and anything under such categories. I feel like the specific niche of building and 3D printing FNAF animatronic heads doesn't really give you many places to start besides go learn to 3D model. Maybe it's improved since I set out to build mine, but I feel like watching this video may give the average prospective Glamrock Freddy head builder a bit more insight into the process of building it. Of course, I am of the firm belief that this can only be learned through doing. I went through my 5-hour Sabaton playlist about 10 times throughout the course of sanding this thing, and I think that really isn't an experience you can replicate with words. Well, I mean, I could sort of show you. Overall, I'm happy with how the shell turned out, but there's a lot of room for improvement, so hopefully I can do better in the future with my next project.